Luca Nation. Conrad's got the intro today.
Yes,
He's ready to rock. Look at that smile.
Luca Nation, welcome back to another episode of Scouts. Of course, it is me, Conrad, and I'm here with Andrew Goldberg. How are you doing today, Mr. Goldberg?
I'm doing amazing, man. I'm doing amazing. I was gonna kick this off pretending that you were in Oklahoma City. You just were behind the scenes talking to your idol, Mr. Sam Presti, and I want to hear the scoop, man. This guy gets more first rounders than fill in the blank.
So much to talk about today, and one of those things that you just mentioned was a trade that we saw go down between the Boston Celtics and the Oklahoma City Thunder. But not only that, we have injuries taking place, we have protocol being violated, and of course, Game 7s being forced. It's a good episode today. I can feel it, ladies and gentlemen, and I hope you can too. But first thing is first, let's go ahead and talk about this trade. So we actually just posted this on the Luca Nation Network page. For those of you that don't know, go ahead and follow us there. There's plenty of stuff that you can see there, plenty of content to consume. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Go ahead and follow it there. But we just posted about the trade actually just now. And what happened was Kemba Walker was traded to the Oklahoma City Thunder along with the number 16 overall pick this year and a 2025 second-round pick from the Celtics, obviously, along with Moses Brown and Al Horford going to the Boston Celtics with a 2023 second rounder, I believe is what it is. And overall, pretty solid deal. I don't think any team necessarily came out on top. I personally believe it's a pretty even trade, but I guess my dissection will more or less just be why I personally believe each team did it. But Andrew, I want to hear what you're thinking first. Do you have anything that you want to say? Anything that you've got going on in your mind? Let's hear it.
Questions. I have more questions than statements. Will Kemba play in Oklahoma City?
I think he will. He wanted to part ways with Boston, so I think that he will play in Oklahoma City. New change of scenery. So yeah, I think so.
Is this a bigger kind of maybe gives us an answer as to why the Celtics were struggling this year? Clearly, Brad Stevens and Kemba. Am I making too much of that?
I mean, the thing is, I still think it's very cloudy. I think some of the stuff, like some of the reasons why they were struggling was obvious, but the reasons why they were struggling as bad as they were for literally as long as they were, and like those issues weren't resolved, that's still kind of cloudy to me. And I do think that you're on the right track here. I think this might have been a bit of an issue. Maybe there was some clashing between Stevens and Ainge, or Stevens and Kemba, or all three of them that we just don't know about as NBA fans. And that's part of the reason that this deal occurred. So maybe I don't think that we'll ever get like a certified answer. I don't think that Woj or someone else, some other source is going to come out and say Kemba Walker and Brad Stevens had these issues or something like that. At least right now, maybe a season or two down the line, if something changes, maybe we'll hear more about it.
And then finally, I think the big winner is SGA.
Kind of. I mean, yeah, kind of.
Let me tell you why, and then you tell me what you think. SGA was responsible for running more offense through him than just about anyone in the league. Maybe Trae Young and Luka were above him, but he had to score buckets on his own. So he had the most unassisted points in the league last year. You bring Kemba in, he could take a little bit of that load off, and they could have a really, really solid backcourt. That's how I see it, at least for the first quarter of the season.
Yeah. I 100% agree there. The one thing that concerns me, and this isn't like a huge concern where I think that the Celtics or not the Celtics, the Thunder are screwed or anything like that. I'm just a little bit concerned about his chemistry with Kemba Walker. I'm kind of concerned about that because I do know that Shea is typically more of a score first guy, but he's kind of beginning to get into a pass first role. He's kind of becoming their playmaker, which I'm personally very happy about. I've always thought he's had excellent vision since he was a rookie. Can be a fantastic playmaker in this league, but I do know that he also likes to score for sure. So I'm just curious to see what will happen there because I know Kemba is not a playmaking point guard by any means. He is typically just a score first, get you buckets type of guy. That's what he does, which I do think will definitely help the Celtics or the Thunder, and it will take a bit of a load off of SGA, 100%.
It'll take a load off SGA, and I think it'll pad his stats too. I think actually SGA is going to have a triple-double next year. Quite a few of them.
Average triple? Oh, okay. Have a triple-double, yes. I thought you said average for a second. I was like, I don't think so. But get a couple.
I'm not going to go that far, but I don't think it would be as crazy as you think because the guy's their primary ball handler. He's their primary scorer, and I would argue he probably would have had more assists last year if he had some other players around him that would score buckets.
And I agree, but it's the rebounds. There's no way that he's going to average enough rebounds, in my opinion, to get a triple-double personally. I think he's a solid rebounder. I mean, he's a bigger guard, but he doesn't crash your glass enough to average 10 rebounds plus a game. I just don't see it personally.
It's a lot. It's a lot. Here's what I'll say.
Although without Moses Brown and Al Horford, you never know.
But it's not even about the size. Remember Westbrook? Like Westbrook's a great rebounder, but they also ran the offense so that they boxed out and let Westbrook grab the rebound so he could push it. And with a young team, I don't think they're going to be building around defense. I think they're going to be trying to play a little bit faster. So there's a lot that could happen. It's very speculative, but I'm big. I'm hyped for SGA.
I am too. Now,
and hey, we'll recall this video. We'll recall this exact video. We'll see if it was the truth.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about why I think both teams did this deal, because I think there's a couple of very interesting points that we could see potentially take shape in the future. So here's what I'm going to talk about. So first of all, why would the Thunder do this trade? In my opinion, they may be targeting someone, or they have a couple of guys that they really like in this draft. It's a loaded draft class. They're probably going to end up with a top pick. And if they don't get, let's say they want a top 4 pick, the guy that they want gets picked or could get picked at number 3, right? They get picked number 5. Then maybe they throw in this 16th overall pick along with a couple of other assets, and they could move up for that guy. Or maybe they are targeting someone in the middle of the lottery that we just don't know about. And, of course, that's why, they took the deal with this pick being involved. But I also really want to talk about Kemba Walker, because I think he could be a huge trade asset within the next season or two because of this deal. Because here's the thing. He is a score-first point guard, right? Like I said before, he's a score-first point guard. He does not pass very much. And it's very similar to a situation, or it could be very similar to a situation that we saw his prior teammate, Gordon Hayward, just in about 2 years ago. He got injured, but besides that, he was also the 4th option on this team scoring-wise. And all of a sudden he gets, not traded, but he signs to Charlotte and is a borderline all-star caliber player before his injury goes down, right? And why is that? Well, because he's finally not covered by the other 3 players on this roster that are all score-first players, right? So he finally kind of not broke out, but he finally got more touches, more opportunity, and was able to average over 20 points a game consistently. Kemba Walker has injury issues. He has had consistency issues a bit throughout the late stage of his career, but I think in Oklahoma City overall, his consistency should pick up, and I also think that his end of the season statistics will look better as well. And because he's on a player option for next year, or can accept a player option next year, that means that he could become even more of a trade asset, because all of a sudden he has an up year, looks great, looks like a fantastic player. Plus, you can renegotiate a new contract with him within the next year after that. I mean, that's a great deal. All of a sudden, they could maybe ship him out, get a couple of picks in, or get a young asset, or whatever reason, or whatever thing the Oklahoma City Thunder want. He could be a huge trade asset in the future if all goes according to plan. Now, will all go according to plan? We have to wait and find out. But I think that is a huge, huge thing that not enough people are talking about when talking about this trade overall.
So you see Kemba playing 3-6 months in OKC and then moving them before the trade deadline?
I could see it potentially taking shape in the offseason, because I think his player option is for next year. So yeah, maybe it is then, or maybe they renegotiate a contract with him and then trade him. It could be either one, or sign and trade even. It could potentially be a sign and trade. I don't know for sure if the sign and trade applies to his contract, because that he was just traded and it's a player option. I'm not completely sure. If it does apply to him, though, I wouldn't be surprised if the Thunder played the entire season with him and then traded him during free agency. But now let's talk about the Celtics, because this is just as interesting, if not more so. They got Moses Brown and Al Horford, and initially I was thinking, this is stupid. Why would you trade for 2 centers? I understand you want to help with your depth, but you already have Robert Williams. Now you're bringing in Al Horford, and you're bringing in Moses Brown. 3 pretty solid big men, at the very least. You need a point guard now that Kemba Walker's gone. Why didn't you try to potentially take a backup point guard for some reason, or something along those lines? Well, something that I personally didn't think about until just recently was the fact that his contract is non-guaranteed. And a shout out to why am I forgetting his name? Sporting Logically on YouTube, because he was the reason that I saw this trade go down in the first place. And so I watched the first 3 minutes of it and this morning. And something he talked about was the fact that this contract is non-guaranteed, I believe, next year as well. His next season, or maybe it's the season after, his contract is not guaranteed, which means that the Celtics could potentially do a buyout offer not pay him his entire contract, let him walk, and then extend Marcus Smart with the money that they would have left over from that buyout offer. Or if they really want to use that money in free agency, if someone that they really like comes along that they want to bring in, right? Then they have Moses Brown to step in as a backup once Al Horford is gone, and they don't have to worry about replacing him and, just having Robert Williams be their center, because depth has obviously been their most important and biggest issue so far. So those are the reasons why I personally believe that each team did the deal, and potentially we could see some interesting stuff go down, within the next season or two.
Gosh, if you're listening to this, you've got some good stuff there to clip. I'm telling you guys, when we started the show Scouts, I was excited for the NBA playoffs. I'm now excited for the NBA offseason because this man right here, I could tell it, Sam. I could tell it. This man is a future GM, and he loves the behind the scenes, the business of the business behind NBA. That was a cool breakdown.
Thank you.
Should we go Luka and the Mavs?
We could, or because you mentioned the business of the NBA, we could talk about this little thing called LeBron not getting any protocol while CP3 does get protocol. However, he actually tested positive.
Conrad is very, very rarely salty. It's clear that he's salty. He's excited for the Suns team.
Yes.
Is this your horse? Is it your horse in the race now?
Probably. I mean, after this, I honestly, I don't know. I do love the Suns team, though. I do love the Suns team. There's no doubt about that. But one of the biggest reasons for that was CP3. Look, LeBron should have gotten protocol, but it's understandable. The business of the NBA, it's a business. They need to keep their ratings up, having the best player or the best player of the potentially the greatest of all time, depending on how you look at it, in one of the biggest markets in the entire NBA. Playing in the playoffs is super important for your ratings, right? And super important for your money making, which is a big issue right now because of the virus and what it has done to the league the past 2 seasons. And at the same time, Chris Paul also did actually test positive, whereas LeBron didn't actually. I don't know if he was even tested or what the deal was there, but we never saw a positive test from LeBron. Whether he was tested or not, I don't know. So there is a bit of a difference between these two situations, but it still really, really blows for the Suns team. Really, really blows for sure.
Put this in perspective for us. When can he come back?
Honestly, I don't know. I'm going to have to look at that because, I mean, he's got some time. It heavily depends on, when the Clippers or Mavericks advance. If this series goes to 7, then he may be able to come back sooner than we think. Yeah, actually, are you looking it up right now?
Yeah, and the hard thing with it says Chris Paul out indefinitely because of coronavirus protocols, could miss a portion of the Western Conference Finals.
Okay, we'll see what happens.
But that could be 1 or 2 games too.
At the same time, though, it could also be 3 or 4 because a portion could, be half of their 7 games. That's the biggest issue, is that they're saying it's scary. That's all I can say. It is scary for the Suns team.
How about this? We're gonna monitor this situation. I'm pretty sure he's going to be in COVID protocol on Monday when we record our next episode, and we'll try to give people a little bit more of an update on what could happen on Monday.
For sure.
Here's the thing. Sam even said the Suns have a lot of depth, so, especially the guard position. You can't replace Chris Paul.
That is just it. They do have a lot of depth. They have some nice backup guards. Although I would honestly say besides center, that is probably like their weakest position would be point guard. And even in overall, their guard situation is not great anyway. They have Campaign and Javon Carter, who are both pretty solid players. They're excellent role players, but neither one of them is really a guy that you look at and say, hey, run the offense. Hey, you're our starting point guard. But especially that first part, run the offense. Devin Booker is now going to be running the offense. We saw him do it last year under the first season of Monty Williams, and he actually did very well. But one of the biggest issues that this team had was the fact that he was constantly drawing the double because now he was creating his own shot. He was creating a ton of offense for himself, and he was the guy that had the ball in his hands most, creating offense for others. Chris Paul took that load off his shoulders, deciding to, run the offense, be that floor general, and take the ball out of Devin Booker's hands, giving him more opportunity to find open shots in one-on-one situations. Whereas now, what I believe is going to happen if Chris Paul doesn't come back in whatever series it is, whoever they face in the Western Conference Finals, we'll see Devin Booker drawing the double pretty frequently without Chris Paul for that reason. And it's going to depend. Excuse me. Jesus. and he's going to depend on Javon. He's going to depend on Javon Carter and Cam Payne to work really well off ball in order to find open shots, and I'm not sure if I really can count on them to do that. Javon Carter, I think, could do that. Cam Payne, I really don't personally, although he hasn't improved much over the past couple of seasons. I'm really scared about the fact, like, just creating offense for other individuals in a situation like this. It'll be interesting to see, because I think that if he can create offense at an elite level, we're going to have to give him even more recognition and more respect than we already have. And it could give us a look into what will happen with the Phoenix Suns and what will happen with Devin Booker once Chris Paul is gone. Because, of course, he's in his mid-30s, late 30s. He's going to retire at some point, and this team will be left without a guy to take that load off of Devin Booker's shoulders. So I think it's going to be an interesting situation. I think it's going to be scary more than it is eye-opening, which is a bit worrisome for a guy that really loves the Suns team right now. So it's a tough situation. I also love Chris Paul, so it sucks to see him out.
Who do they match up with? Jazz or Clippers? Who's coming out of this? A Kawhi-less Clippers team that somehow beat the number 1 seed Jazz, or do the Jazz come back and make this a 7-game series and win in 7?
What it looks like is Mike Conley could finally be returning in Game 6. I don't think he's played a single game in this series, and if he does come back, I think it's game over for the Clippers. Every single game has pretty much been close. I think there was one or two that was like a 20-point game. I can think of one that was like a 20-point game in the Clippers' favor. I want to say it was Game 4, something along those lines. They took a huge lead over the Clippers, right? However, they don't have Kawhi Leonard. You cannot count on Reggie Jackson to consistently provide you buckets off the bench. Same thing with, Morris. Their supporting cast is just not consistent overall. I'm not going to go through every guy. They don't really have a super consistent supporting cast. I don't think Paul George is going to be the issue with this team, but I don't think he's going to be able to do enough to get them over the hump. And if Mike Conley does come back, he's going to be the guy that is the X factor. He is the X factor that is going to put the Jazz over the hump to beat this Clippers squad. I think even if Kawhi Leonard was here, having him back, and if he can play relatively close to, healthy production levels, I think that the Jazz could still win this, depending on, of course, how robotic Kawhi were to be, right? If he were to just absolutely dominate in both those games, who knows? But I think that having Mike Conley is huge for this team. He's provided elite defense this year. Elite. Not enough people talk about just how good he was this season. He was a fantastic defensive piece overall for this roster. He provides a little bit of extra floor spacing with some nice three-point shooting, can provide you a couple of buckets, and also not run your offense, but he can be a guy that you give the ball and say, hey, create some offense for us. We're stuck in the half court and we just need to reset. Something like that, right? He can do that for you. So overall,
he's a playmaker, and that team doesn't have a ton of playmakers. They have a few, but they don't have a ton.
Exactly. They really don't. So overall, I'm going to take the Jazz in 7 on this one. I think it'll still be close games. Potentially for one of them. I think there's also a chance that the Jazz blow them out. But no matter what, I'm going to call this shot, and I think that it's going to be Jazz. If Mike Conley does come back, which it looks like he will, Jazz beat the Clippers in 7 games.
Neither of these teams interest me.
Not really.
I don't like how they play. You said it was your most interesting series, so that always fascinated me.
It was. It was for a little while.
But I'm going to throw a potential scenario here.
Right,
when a star like Kawhi goes down and he's playing alongside a star like Paul George, and Paul George is a star whether people like it or not.
Yes.
Sometimes Kawhi's shadow could have blinded, or Kawhi's light could have blinded Paul George. And I could see Paul George going for 40 or 45 tonight. I could see him going off now that he has free reign of, like, this is kind of my team now.
Mm-hmm. I think that's possible. But here's the thing. They're going to still need another 55 points to win this game.
Apparently, Reggie Jackson's hitting buckets. I don't know where it's coming from.
If he can't keep that up, great. But, I mean, still, even then, let's say he puts in 20 and Paul George gets 45. They still are going to need another 35, 40 points, and I'm not sure if the rest of the supporting cast can get them that, especially if Mike Conley does come back.
Let's move. This series doesn't interest me at all. It does, but like to compare to the other series,
I agree. I like both of. I like how competitive it has been, but they're both very boring teams to watch and kind of boring teams to talk about too in a situation like this, especially without Kawhi Leonard and without, I guess, Mike Conley.
And I actually haven't watched a ton of that series. It's on later, but anyway, Do you want to go about? Do you want to go into? I want to talk a little bit about Luka because I think, and this is something that you said, the Mavs had the worst roster in the NBA last year.
Yes.
The worst supporting cast around Luka is actually, or one of the worst.
Yep.
That's been consistent. If you look at this front office on the Mavs, they haven't brought in a good free agent in forever. Nope. And they made a trade. They made a change. I believe they fired the GM and then Carlisle stepped down. If that's the way it happened.
I don't know for sure about the GM before Carlisle. All I know is that Carlisle stepped down. I didn't even know about the GM until he just mentioned it. Actually, I somehow missed that.
Yep, GM's gone, Carlisle's gone. But I think this is really cool because what you really have is probably the most exciting two positions in the NBA to hire into. You have your cream of the crop. Who doesn't want to go and GM build a roster and coach Luka?
Mm-hmm.
And now you could really build a contender. And I think two trades are interesting. One is probably unrealistic. The other one is more. Giannis to the Mavs, super unrealistic.
It was realistic before he signed his Supermax. But yes, I understand.
Ben Simmons to the Mavs.
Disagree. Well, I'll get into Ben Simmons later, but I disagree. That's not good whatsoever. Ben Simmons, on the contract that he currently is on, is a terrible player. Terrible player. You do not want him on your franchise. There's just no doubt in my mind about that. You don't want him on your franchise.
I agree. Do you think that they could take on that salary and give up a lot of cheap assets? Because here's the thing with the Mavs. The Mavs don't have any assets. Who are they going to trade?
And the thing is, they're
going to send Kristaps Porzingis for Ben Simmons. That's going to be the blockbuster trade of the year.
What piece are they going to give up? The 76ers is currently constructed need a second option that can space a floor. Tobias Harris is good. I wouldn't count on him to be the second option that spaces the floor at an elite level. You can't just take. I should have said that too. At an elite level, because Kristaps Porzingis cannot give you 25 a game, right? And that's what you're going to need. He gives you 17 on some relatively inefficient shots too. But they need a guy they need a point guard that can shoot threes, that can space the floor. And Ben Simmons does not do that. We'll talk a little bit about that, but I do want to talk about the Dallas Mavericks because there's something that I am curious about. Why the hell has Kenny Atkinson not gotten a single job by any other organization in the entire NBA? And why has his name not been in anybody's radar at all in any discussions about coaching? I don't understand this. This guy helped take that D'Angelo Russell Brooklyn Nets team and make them a playoff team. The only reason he was ever fired was because KD and Kyrie were upset that DeAndre Jordan was getting less minutes and Jarrett Allen was a starter. That is why he was fired. I don't know if you guys know that. I don't know if that was actually confirmed, but it's 99% sure about that, right? Because the three of them signed in Brooklyn as a package deal. Hey, you gotta do what we want you to do if you want us to come to Brooklyn. And so that is what they did. But Kenny Atkinson realized that Jarrett Allen was a better player and was starting to give Jarrett Allen more minutes in the starting role, and he was fired for that reason. Right? He was fired for that reason, and he has not gotten a single job offer since. He is very good for young teams that are looking to rebuild. He's very good at player development. He's an excellent guy with culture, right? Same guy, very similar to Monty Williams, in my opinion, that does a great job of establishing hard work, grit, and grind, and always try your hardest, which is very important. He is one of my favorite coaches in the entire NBA for that reason, and pretty much one of my top candidates to get a job for pretty much any team that is even close to a rebuilding stage. If anybody is to replace Rick Carlisle, I pray to God that it is Kenny Atkinson for Luka's sake and for the Dallas Mavericks organization as a whole. He better get a job there. That is who they better hope that they land, in my opinion.
Maybe Scott Atkinson goes to the Wizards.
Sure. I don't really care. Any rebuilding, he deserves a job at this point. He really deserves a job.
This is rare form for Mr. Conrad here. He usually doesn't come in this fired up, but he's pulling no punches. I agree. I love that Brooklyn Nets team. Remember Theo Pixton, the bench mob? They were always dancing. They were supporting the team.
One team to watch in the entire NBA for that reason.
Yep.
Very much.
They had no talent on that team at all. This was the Nets team.
They had Russell. They had Dinwiddie, who was all right. And back then Dinwiddie was still working on his game. He hadn't reached the level that he's on right now where he's
I think we could argue that the coach helped him get to the level he's at now because Dinwiddie improved a lot. Dinwiddie was nobody on the Pistons.
And Karis LeVert too. Karis LeVert was there as well. I think he did an excellent job helping develop these guys and helping them grow as players. And I think he can still do that currently. And I don't understand why he is not a coach in the NBA.
This wasn't even – so, guys, this was a topic that was Mavs. He's like, can we talk a little bit about the Mavs? Kenny Atkinson. So that wasn't even about the Mavs. Let's Let's go Sixers Hawks. I posted on our Luca Nation network your video clip where you said this Hawks team, all the games are going to be close. They were, but this Hawks team matches up really, really well with the Sixers.
Yep.
I don't think we've ever seen anything like this. A blown 18-point lead and a blown 26-point lead. 4 for 14 free throw shooting from Ben Simmons. It looks like he's trying to miss. It legitimately does. What do you make of this, man? Go with this in two ways. I want to hear what you make of the rest of the series. Ben Simmons and Embiid aren't going to last past this offseason, are they?
I hope not. But I really, the thing is, at this point, after seeing these performances, what real value will the 76ers really even get for Ben Simmons? Like, I don't know. I don't know for sure if he's going to be a very movable guy. I don't know for sure if he's going to be a very tradable asset at this point. I'm very concerned about the 76ers for that reason. I hope that they can break that duo up. The biggest issue for me, or the biggest question for me, and the biggest question I'm sure that their GMs are having and their front office as a whole is having is, what are we going to get back? Like, what do they get back? Who do they target? Right? Kyle Lowry was their guy. James Harden was their guy, and they passed on both of them.
They passed on him?
They technically passed on Harden because they were asking for too much, which at the time it looked like they were, but now seeing the role that Harden has fulfilled in Brooklyn right now and seeing how bad Ben Simmons has been, I personally wouldn't say that that's too much value. I think they were asking for like 2 picks, Tyrese Maxey and Ben Simmons for James Harden straight up, which is really not that big of a deal. It might have been 3 picks. But overall, especially looking at this, I mean, look, what's that? How does it saying go? Something vision is 2020 or something like that. Perspective.
Hindsight is 2020.
Hindsight is 2020. Hindsight is 2020. Right. So, like, at the time, it did look like a bad deal, but especially right now, like, they really should have taken that offer. They really should have. And I would have also been looking at potentially Kyle Lowry at this point because Embiid is not going to last overall. His career will probably end at like 32 for his prime at the very best. Right, like that's the best case scenario. He ends his prime continues at 32 years old, and then he's out of the league by 35 or something like that. Like he plays at an elite level for 4 more years, whatever it is.
Honestly, he looks like every other day he's gonna get a season-ending injury. Just the way he like flops his body around.
Yes, it's just he's very scared to walk on the court for 2 reasons. One, he's so dominant, but then 2, you always are concerned that he's going to get injured. All the time.
And he's not in the best shape. He's not fat, but you could tell he's gotten a little pudgier.
He's a bit heavy set, but I mean overall he's got a crap ton of muscle too that sometimes it's really hard to even notice. So it's not that much of a deal. But look, let's get back onto the topic of conversation. This series, game 6, game 7, right? They're going to need Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris to step it up in these next 2 games. Joel Embiid cannot do it all. But they blew 2 late game leads, I want to say. Like 2 was it back to back? Wasn't it back to back that they blew both
game 4, game 5, 18 points and 26 points.
And one of the biggest reasons for that was Joel Embiid. It's nothing on him as a player. It is nothing on him as a player. He's dealing with a meniscus tear and trying to play through it, which has not helped the situation. But in a situation like that where he can't hit his shots, even though he's your best player, you need your second and third best players to step it up and say, "Hey, we got this. We can help fulfill the production that we're missing from you during this last quarter and just hold the lead." And Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris have not been able to do that. It's a really big issue for them. It is a really, really big issue for them, and I'm not completely sure how they're going to get over the hump. I did take back my original prediction, I want to say in the last episode of Scouts, or maybe the one before that once DeAndre Hunter went down with an injury. But seeing how Ben Simmons has continued to play, I will go back to my first prediction, and I will say that the Hawks do win this series. I don't see it. I don't see it happening any other way, personally. I think that the Hawks will come out on top.
This type of game, so if I was a bettor, I'm betting, man, this is the type of game where I think the Hawks blow them out. Here's why. The Sixers need a perfect – not that 100% they'll blow them out. I think that there's a high probability, and here's why. The Sixers will need to play a perfect game to beat the Hawks tonight. Embiid's going to have to play a huge game tonight. If Embiid doesn't put up 35 or 40 and he puts up, let's say, 18 or 20 and he's just not shooting well, which can happen – after a huge loss like that, you're deflated, your legs are heavy, you're traveling. This Sixers team isn't going to be able to keep up with them. And then flip that. And you see that now, but then flip that. The first game, the Hawks came out and shot like 70% and put up 76 points. The Hawks have all the momentum, and when shooters feel momentum, they have a lot of shooters on that team. You know, the hoop gets bigger.
Yeah. Every shot is falling.
It's a recipe for a blowout, in my opinion.
Yeah, I could see it. I mean, they got the momentum on their side. They're at home. They're back in Atlanta, right, for Game 6. They got a lot of stuff on their side. It's going to be an interesting game. And like you mentioned, we've seen Joel put up 40, and they still lost a game in this series. Real quick, before you do move on to the next game, which, I mean, this kind of is a solid transition point.
What happened with your internet? You were having great internet connection. You were having great
possibility at this point.
You had a great internet connection for 30 minutes of this episode. What happened? Someone's using the dryer at the house.
Did you hear anything I just said?
Oh, you're cutting out for sure.
Oh my God, can you? Am I moving? Hello.
But anyway, so first off, this is one of my favorite episodes so far to date of Scouts. There's a few things we're going to summarize. Chris Paul in protocol, so he might miss a little bit of the Western Conference Finals. The Celtics Oklahoma City trade, if you go back to that, you're doing okay, Conrad. It's still glitching.
There we go. All right, we're good. You just completely came back. I missed everything you just said, but you just came back. I turned off my Wi-Fi. Let's wrap this. Let's get to the next series. Let's finish this stuff up. What were you saying? All right, let's hear it.
Give me your take on the Nets Milwaukee Bucks series.
100%. Look, Game 7. Kevin, here's analysis, and it's very short. If the Nets want to win Game 7, Kevin Durant is going to need more help. James Harden is going to have to step it up even without his injury. Kyrie is already confirmed to be out for Game 7. He's going to need the rest of the supporting cast to step it up. He cannot do it all no matter what. If the Bucks want to win Game 7, Chris Middleton has to play like a number 2 option again. He has to consistently do that. That is my biggest issue with him overall as a number 2 option on this team, is he's not consistent. If they want to win this Game 7, he has to play like a second option. That's really all I have to say about this. Those are the X factors for this final game tomorrow. For those of you that don't know, it is either Kevin Durant gets more help or Middleton plays better, and that will determine the series, in my opinion, or the final outcome of the series.
It's fascinating to me that this is, I've had a good run of predictions this postseason, and this one I wrote off. I thought this was cooked. 2-0, they were getting blown out, and somehow the Bucks might leave this with a win.
Yeah.
I think they will. I'm going to stick to my guns.
I really don't know. Honestly, for me personally, it's a toss-up at this point, because here's the thing.
Obviously.
We said from the beginning this would go to 7 games. Like, that was everybody's initial prediction. This is going to 7 games. There's no way that it doesn't. And we were right, but not for the reasons that we thought. We thought that the reason this would go to 7 games is because both teams would be so good matching up against each other. Fantastic defense versus fantastic offense. And then you still have some pretty good defense and pretty good offense to back it up. Oh my gosh, fantastic basketball. We're loving what we're seeing. But in reality, the reason this has gone to 7 games is because one or both of these teams has played bad in every single game. And it has honestly kind of sucked to watch as an NBA fan, because they've both just played like trash, complete garbage this entire series. So I really can't predict it at this point, because I thought that, and many other NBA fans predicted, these teams are going to be great. These teams are going to be in tip-top shape. They're going to play fantastic basketball, and none of that has come true. So I have no idea. That's my reasoning for either side potentially winning it. We'll see if my reasoning is correct, and if whatever side wins, it wins because of what I said. That's my only real prediction for the series. But I do want to just mention this, that because I mentioned it before. Is it possible is it possible the Atlanta Hawks win the entire thing? I think it is. I think it really is. And I'm shocked that I'm saying this right now, but I think there's a chance the Atlanta Hawks win the NBA Finals this year.
The Hawks will get stomped by the Bucks. If the Nets make it out, maybe. But if they play the Bucks, they'll get stomped.
And why is that?
It's just an uncomfortable matchup for them. All their guards are tiny. Lou Will, Trae Young, Bogdanovich. They're tiny guards. And then you have Giannis, Drew Holiday, and Chris Middleton just attacking them.
So Tobias Harris and Joel Embiid aren't three really tall guys, along with Danny Green and Seth Curry in that starting lineup as well?
No, those guys suck. Giannis, Chris Middleton, and Drew Holiday are good. Those guys suck. Please don't mention Danny Green. Danny Green shouldn't be in the NBA anymore. And Steph Curry is like the JV version of Steph Curry. And Tobias Harris, he's a walking brick. And Ben Simmons, this is an NBA.
There's no effort in this conversation. Joel Embiid has been a bit injured. However, I think it's possible. I think that they could beat the Bucks. I think it's possible. I really do.
I think it's a tough matchup for them.
I think we can cross that bridge when we come to it, or if we come to it. But for now, we'll leave that prediction to you guys. If you guys have made it this far into the episode, let us know what you think. Can the Atlanta Hawks make it to the NBA Finals and potentially win it all? And if you do, why do you think that is? We'll see you guys next time. Thank you for watching this episode of Scouts. I had a great time. Andrew, I hope you did too.
Peace, brother.